So we're interviewing Peter, our chef, our main chef in Priory, our school now. So our first question is, how many years of experience do you have with cooking and being like a chef?
Since 1978, I have been cooking.
How long?
That's when I went through chef school in Hungary, and I've been cooking since that time.
Why do you like cooking?
Why do I like cooking? It's exciting to play with different spices and herbs and seasonings from around the world, and I really like experimenting with different flavors, and just the artistic aspect of it makes it fun. And seeing people's expression when they enjoy the food and they enjoy what you've created for them, it's satisfying to see positive reaction.
So how do you plan each meal for us?
I usually I'll look at what we had the week and the week before that, so it's not being repetitive, and I try to incorporate healthy meals, healthy options as much as possible, but at the same time being at the understanding that students don't really want to eat so-called gourmet meals at lunch. They want something more fast foody. They like pizzas, tacos, and chicken nuggets, and popcorn chickens. I mean, it's mostly the students gravitate towards that, and that makes them happier. So.
How do you have a recipe written for everything, or how do you adapt the recipe from sources?
I have a base recipe, and I'll make certain changes according to what I know that some students, if there's a certain herb or something that a lot of students don't care for, I'll admit that and either just leave it out or substitute it with something that will still complement the meal itself.
Did you always try those different herbs before you serve them, or how do you know which one is how do you came to a conclusion which one you're gonna use?
I mean, I'll stay within whatever. If it's a Thai recipe, I'll make sure that I'm using Thai basil, or I split it, or if I have to substitute it, I'll use cilantro. Or if it's some type of Middle Eastern, I can substitute mint with a basil or some other type of mint. So I want to still stay within whatever cultural food it may be. I want to stay within that. But sometimes I don't. It depends. It depends on how much I want to play around with it, and sometimes you experiment, and sometimes it turns out well. Sometimes the flavors may not be what you expect it to be. Sometimes it's surprisingly good. So.
Do you usually use do you choose the flavor according to your preference, or who's do you if you think it's delicious, then you serve it, or what is it according to, or you ask people to
more it's more towards the preference of the people who I'm serving. I mean, if I was still having myself a dinner and I was doing dinners, I would play around with both aspects of it, just so I could expand your culinary palates, so you'd learn different flavors. But since I need to be more in the mornings because of ordering and stuff, and overseeing the lunch, I have made the menus and the recipes more according to the students' flavors and palates. I know most kids majority of the kids don't want spicy, so obviously we don't use spice as much. We don't use jalapenos or chili peppers or too much sriracha, just enough to complement the flavors, but not to be overpowering.
How do you know how much stuff you should buy for every meal, or do you?
Well, I mean, I always shoot for a certain amount. After a while, you know how much of a certain meal and what meals are most popular. And the more popular ones, you always want to make sure you'll take a certain percentage of the student body, and administration and maintenance and everybody is included. So we're talking about approximately 480 people. So you'll take a percentage of that, of how popular the item is, and to prepare it according to that, and calculate what the seconds will be of a certain meal. Some meals are not as popular to some and people will hit the salad bar more, and so we'll increase the Caesar salad, for example. But at the same time, when we have a pizza or a chicken nugget meal or popcorn chicken, people still hit the Caesar because they add it to their Caesar salad. So, there's certain things you have to play around with.
Do you make course meals?
Do I make what?
Course meals, like meals with 5 courses or 10 courses.
Here at the school, no.
No, but yourself,
Yeah. I mean, when I worked in Hungary, the restaurant I worked at in the capital, it was where they had all the presidential and whatever dignitaries coming from other countries would come to that restaurant, and we would have to make 5, 6, 7 course meals and have it beautifully presented, and from the cold platters to the hot food to dessert, and everything had to be very pretty.
That's really cool.
It is. I mean, it is. I mean, if you look at some of those cold platters that we had to make, and then at the end you would take aspic to make it shiny, and it looked like an art piece. It was really pretty.
How do you structure the course meal?
Well, it depends. Again, it depends on the type of food you're making, what type of foods you have on your menu, because obviously if it's a heavier meal, like Hungarian meals, they're heavier because they use a lot of sour cream and different sauces. So the meal is going to be heavier, so you can't really do a bunch of appetizers. Maybe light appetizers, but you don't want to do heavy. And you might have a soup, and then you have a possible salad for the side, because for example, in Hungary, they'll have a salad, a cucumber salad, that goes with a chicken paprika, which is sour cream. So the fatness of the sauce of the sour cream, the cucumber is a soury, so it cuts it, so it doesn't feel as heavy on your palate.
So you would say the main aspect of the course meal, the structure of it, is to balance everything out?
Yeah.
Okay. How would you structure the taste then? Would it
Again, it depends. Sweet, sour, savory. I mean, it all depends on what you're planning to have and what the menu is going to look like. And when you put it together, you want to balance the sweet and sour, or the savory and the bitter, and all these flavors have to be balanced out.
How do you manage time? Because some stuff you need long time to cook, or do you do it before the restaurant open, and then when the restaurant open you just put it on a plate? Or?
That is not here. You're talking about in a restaurant environment. A lot of the things have to be pre-done. I mean, back in the day when we used to make, for example, stock. We used to make beef stock, and we would take the bones, the beef marrow bones, and roast them with parsnips, carrots, onions, garlic, and we would roast them for 2-3 hours until it got a nice roasty flavor. Then you would get that out and let it up, put some water in it, and then cook that for several hours. And there was still meat left on some of the bones, so that would still be cooking into it. and then you would have to strain that to cheesecloth several times, so it'd be completely clear, and that's how you would get your beef stock. Nowadays, you have little containers of beef stock, or beef base, or chicken base, or veggie base, or even seafood. So there's been a lot of shortcuts. Some of it is helpful when you want to speed things up. Is the flavor good as it is back then? Probably not. But time-wise, it cuts back hours and hours and possibly days, depending on what you're making.
So you think we should, when we do the course meal, we should buy a grocery in the morning or something like that? Is that how you do it in restaurant environment? Like
Optimally, if you can, yes, but I mean, it depends where you're located at. I mean, if you're close to a market, a large open market where you can go and before you come in a farmer's market and you can get the freshest produce and butcher that has the freshest beef, or local farms, then yes. But otherwise, you know, you're pretty much up to what's available, where your produce comes. I mean, the majority of the stuff that we get here, I make sure that we get it all locally produced. And same with the meats. Sometimes I can't, because it depends on the weather, the rain, how hot it is. All these influence it, and then the supply chain issue. So there's a lot of factors that are counted into that.
We're trying to make a 10-course meal, so how should we
10 course.
Yeah.
Wow. You'll fall asleep by the time you get to 5 or 6. People will be like, you're going to have to make it very small.
Very small, yes.
Everything has to be small, because, again, you don't want, unless you're going to, I mean, some places they will do, and it's a several hour affair. So it's not something that you just sit down and you have one meal after the other. Some places they sit down, there's a break in between, and then you bring the meal in and stuff. So, I mean, you can do the appetizer, and it may not be just one, it may be 2 or 3 appetizer, but you want to play on the palate and have different flavors. But you don't want them to overpower, because if you overpower the meal, it may mess with the taste buds. So by the time you get to the next one, they won't be able to taste the food that you're making. And then you have a soup or a pasta, depending. Again, this is it depends on if you're doing a certain region of what is accepted there or what they do there. Then you can do salad. Then you can have salad, and then you can have a partial main course, or one might be a chicken or something else, and then have another that may be a more heavier. And then you have dessert. That can be also, you can go one way where it's a dessert, or you can do a cheese, strawberries, and grapes as a dessert, or you can do both. So, and then you got to what kind of drink you're going to have with that, and that influences how much, whether you want it to be sweet or whatever, or just keep it water. Who is this? Who are you making it for? Who's going to be eating this?
Alia's family.
Who?
It's our friend's family.
Your friend's family.
Yeah.
Okay.
What would you say is a good appetizer, just to make people open up their stomach and stuff?
That's really a question that you need to ask people.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Survey.
Huh?
Survey.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you can do is give the person a menu that you've come up with, and present that, and tell them, here, check it off what you'd like, and do it according to that. That way everybody gets, it'll be a consensus what you're going to make. That way you don't make stuff that people may be allergic to or may not enjoy as much as others do, and that way you have a pretty much satisfactory dinner.
So you plan, even before in restaurants, you give them the menu to see before they
Well,
come?
I mean, yes. I mean, if you're at a restaurant, you have a certain menu that you have a listing of the foods. Like anytime you go to a restaurant,
Yeah.
you have a menu and you have a big selection of what you're going to do. You may also have a section where for parties, what you have available. So, or a special dinner, or like Valentine's, they put certain dinners together, or for Christmas Day or Easter, they'll have a certain menu that's specifically geared toward having a special occasion dinner.
Okay. Oh, what sanitary precautions should we take when we cook?
The number one thing, always wash your hands. That's the first thing. Anytime you come into a kitchen, first thing you have to wash your hands for 20 seconds. And it needs to be soap, warm water, hot water, and you have to wash it. You really got to wash your hands. You got to make sure when you go from one job to the next, you got to wash your hands. When you use one area, if it's all vegetables, fine, but if you're going to mix things, then you have to wash the surface in between your meals. You have to sanitize it. It's really important. Cleaning your hands in the area that you're working, washing chicken, your vegetables have to be properly washed. Make sure if they need to be peeled, they need to be peeled. Even if you're cutting a melon or anything like that, you have to wash the outside of it, because if you cut it and it has bacteria that can cause serious illness, and you cut it and you're cutting all the bacteria, and it goes on the knife, and when you cut it through, it goes into the flesh of the melon, so you have to be careful. And you got to make sure you heat everything properly. When you reheat, it has to be a certain temperature to make sure you kill every bacteria in it. When you serve food that's hot food, that has to be at a certain temperature, above 141. If it's cold food, it needs to be held at below 41 degrees. So, because if it's in between those temperatures, that's where bacteria doubles every hour. So by the time you get 3-4 hours in, you think you have it at the right temperature, but it's dipped under either gone under the temperature or over the temperature. It's in the danger zone. You can get people sick, so you have to be careful with that.
How do you like store like the ingredients? Like do you put meat on like a freezer, or
Say that again?
do you like, how do you store like the ingredients that you bought? Like, do you always put meat in a freezer and like put vegetables? Like, how do you like longer like the shelf life of like food?
Well, I mean, if it's frozen, meat shouldn't be. I mean, I wouldn't have fish more than 2 or 3 days, max. I mean, that's 2 days is unless it's frozen. If frozen, you take it out and either you put it in the refrigerator and let it thaw out, which is the most optimal. The other, and this is the quicker method, is just put it into an insert and run water onto it, cold water. But it has to continue. It doesn't need to be a heavy stream. It can be a drop, but it has to be enough that it continues to keep the temperature below 41 degrees. And you can quick thaw that way. But the most optimal way is take it out, depending on the size of the piece of fish or beef or whatever that you're taking out, that you give it enough time. A larger piece may take 2 or 3 days.
And also, when the fish smell, does it mean it's bad?
Excuse me?
When the fish is like smelly, does it mean it's like already bad?
Yeah, I mean, if fish does not have a just clean smell to
Even
it.
though it's not a sashimi grade, even though we cook it, it's still not good.
Yeah, you shouldn't eat it. Same with chicken. I mean, you'll know when chicken or fish is bad. It has a very strong smell to the ammonia smell. It's not good.
So when we buy fish or chicken, we should buy like 2 to 3 days before we get it, right?
If you're buying fresh, I wouldn't buy more than a day max. Unless you could put it on ice and have it in a good refrigerator. Then possibly 2 days if it's a fresh source. But it depends on the supplier. I mean, some places are good.
Okay.
What's that?
But meat is okay, right?
I can't hear you.
But meat is okay too.
Meat lasts longer. Meat lasts longer as long as it's Privac, meaning it's cellophane wrapped, where there's no air getting to it, and it's held at a good right temperature when you bought it, and you get it immediately into the refrigerator when you get home. That'll last you 4 or 5 days.
Oh, I still have a question. Like for the course meals, how do you balance like each like protein, carbs, veggies, pasta? Like how do you balance like the nutrients?
Well, I mean, this depends on you again. I mean, you can have it all, depending on whether it's going to be you can have a vegetarian appetizer, and then have one meat, and then have one fish. So, and then you complement it. It doesn't need to be a bunch of things in there, but you want to give color and flavor and then you play around with the certain sauces or vinegars or lemon juice, whatever you're going to use as your perk up your and herbs and spices. All that has to be taken into consideration when you're making it.
But there's no certain way I have to do it, but
it is not set. I mean, that's the thing in cooking. Cooking is open to interpretation, and you can do whatever you want. It's not like, unlike baking. Baking, on the other hand, you have to follow the basis of baking, because everything interacts with each other, and if the interaction isn't there, or you leave something out, then a cake isn't going to rise, or a souffle isn't going to rise, and then it'll deflate, or a cheesecake will be all cracked up. So everything in baking has to be just right temperature, proper mixing, proper ingredients have to be right temperature, has to be, you can't put cold egg whites into it. It has to be room temperature. So all that stuff has to be done according to whatever recipe you're following or whatever you're doing, because it'll throw it off and it'll ruin the whole cake or whatever you're making.
Okay.
Do you have any farmers that you would recommend us to go? That have fresh stuff?
I don't know how much of a Portola Valley used to have one. I don't know if they have one here. I think it's on Thursdays, but you'd have to find that out. The local market, local farms here farmers come and sell their produce. So, otherwise Segonas is a pretty decent place, Redwood City, off of Woodside Road. They have a big selection and it's pretty good. Whole Foods is pretty decent, depending on which Whole Foods you go to, but their produce section is pretty good. Ranch 99 is, depending on which Ranch 99 you go to, they're pretty decent also.
No. Thank you so much for accepting the interview.
You're quite
Peter.
welcome. I hope it's helpful for you.